Well, good morning, everybody, from the snowy campus of Yale up in Massachusetts, Dr. Rodriguez, and from New York, Patty Frudenberg. Thank you for joining us again on another Presents Network special two-part mini-series for the opening of Othello is Disgusting, and the exhibit we've worked on for 2 years. Is it snowing in New York, Patty? How are you guys doing with the winter?
It's very deceiving because it's very sunny, which is nice to see, but very frigid. Don't let that sun fool you. It's cold up here.
And Dr. Rodriguez, the last time I spoke with you, it was 6 inches deep.
Well, the snow has stopped. Patty was probably in the same front that came through. So we would call this a dusting. Yeah. You know, I mean, at this point, I'm like wondering where's the 2 feet of snow. So I thought we were headed that way. Praise the Lord, we didn't. And, you know, it's like Patty said, you got the sun out there, but don't be fooled.
Yeah. So I know, Patty, that you have been working with us for quite a long time under Dr. Joynicole Martinez, who is very busy at the hospital these days. If there was anything you learned about blacks and whites being together, Patty, or inter-skin color, love affairs and marriages during this 2 years, what would be your thoughts of what you've learned just about Othello or
Well,
society?
you know, it really caught my interest, the whole Othello story. You know, first of all, I feel like honored to have shared one of those segments with Joynicole because I know she is, you know, so busy doing really great medical work. But, you know, it really brought to light, this goes back hundreds of years, you know, and at the end of the day, love is love, you know, and it's a shame that, you know, because of our tone of skin, that such horrible things can happen. And then our words really matter because look what ended up happening as a result of somebody's mere opinion, you know, and yeah, it's definitely a rabbit hole. So I'll stop there.
Exactly. We have learned so much, and I think we've done a very good job at getting rid of the word race and racial strife and race wars. There's only one race on this planet, the human race. There used to be other races that lived on this planet, and I think the American Anthropological Association has explained that best enough and put out on their website from the Board of Trustees. There's only actually one survivor race left here, okay, and we're called Homo sapien. but there used to be Homo erectus and Cro-Magnon, many races that lived here. And so the stupidity, in their opinion, of people mentioning things like interracial marriage, that's why I said inter-skin color marriage, because there is no such thing as different races that live on Earth. And with that in mind, we have a special group of guests today. I'd like to bring them on. One is one of my personal heroes here, Reverend Billy Howes, and he is a member of the Legal Redress Committee here in Cleveland County, a fellow member of the NAACP with me. Reverend Howes, welcome.
Great. Mr. Mangello, good to be here.
Yes, sir. And I was wondering if you could give us just a short snippet of your important work and what you do with the Legal Redress Committee, because I think that'll give us a segue into inviting our next guest on from the Tate family. But what is it exactly that you are in charge of and that you do, sir?
The NAACP has what's called the Legal Redress Committee, and where we are often given different cases of where there is racial improprieties, where there is a lot of marginalizing when it comes down to skin color, people of color. And not only people of color, but people of all, as you say, of all colors, whether they call them non-color or color. It stands for the National Advancement Association of Colored People. When it says colored people, it means every person. And one of the things that we do, when we find injustices, improprieties that's been done based upon race, we're called on often to inspect those cases, to see what we see from those cases, go to become the voice often for the justice of that, to make sure that there's equality as much as possible to be done, and that no one will be discriminated against. That's what we do primarily.
Yeah, I think you really explained it quite well. I've been following your work since becoming a member, and these are cases, a lot of times where a person is getting railroaded. And the funniest thing that President Olemny ever mentioned to me was, she said, "Mr. Mangello, what is the color of that piece of paper?" And I said, "This piece of paper here, it's white, Reverend." And she said, "And what is the color of your skin, Mr. Mangello?" I was like, "Well, it's not white." She said, thank you, Mr. Mangello. And so for a little lady that may weigh 120 pounds, she sure is quite a pistol and quite a teacher. So I will never, ever stop quoting her on that, and will never forget that. Any comments, Dr. Rodriguez? You yourself have numerous interskin color relationships and been married, of course, to. Absolutely. Would you like to talk about that? Is that an okay subject?
Well, I did use the terminology of interracial marriage, by the way, earlier, and again, I'm able to put that personal experience out there. At 14 years in relationships, and then even shorter. I should tell you, down south, because you guys brought up the Carolinas, I'll take it even further south. Let's go on down to Florida. Where it's still viewed as a taboo, in that sense of when you look at what year we're in and the dynamics of a society today, of interracial relationships, if that's acceptable with this group. And looking at that, you go even further south, and it turns into a taboo that is still out there at 2022, whether we want to recognize it or not. And we talk about these relationships and what the drawback is. It's an emotional drain throughout the relationship, for sure. And then at time, even in the workplaces, or let's say just in general outdoor society, where you get that eyebrow that still raises, or that look. And it's hard to recognize that in 2022. But again, we could tie hatred into all this. We could throw, that whole salad bowl, or I say melting pot, into this conversation. But as far as relationships are concerned, I like to think what Martin has said. We are all of the human race. So I've never culturally, being Rodriguez, and then, let's say marrying French or Italian, or, however, it's from the heart. Love is love, right, Patricia? As we would say, love is love. But when others don't see it that way, and you become part of, let's say, the outer circle attacks, which you don't notice until it's too late. It's really too late. So how can you build a relationship around that and be in a community that has that mindset? I can tell you as a PhD, that's not my area of concentration, but from a personal standpoint, it's almost impossible. So then when you find yourself, because you've invested into the community through homes, you've settled down, and then you realize that you're not socially accepted within your community because of who you married, you're thinking back to, I used the terminology one time in a conversation. Martin Luther King is rolling over in his grave, but again, not recognizing it. Now, what I want to say about that is, because I talked to a colleague one time about this, and he said to me, it's because the person you married always grew up in that area, therefore they recognize certain behaviors as norms, or as we say in sociology, norms. I mean, I would keep it right at that level. Norms, mores. Can we use the word mores? And again, depending on when you come into a community or a state, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So I'd say for interracial relationships, or however we want to designate it, love is love. And again, whether it's heterosexual or whatever, because I've had my 16-year-old stepdaughter explain to me, there's a lot of different types of relationships. And, I'm a PhD sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm like taking notes, because society has changed to the point where someone comes in your office, you cannot judge them by who they're with. Again, that's where society kicks in and tries to, let's say, determine what is the norm in a community. And then that's when you find the NAACP in, because the reality is you realize there is a racial tension going on there. And it's being trying to contain. And when society tries to contain that now, because we're more transparent than we've ever been, we try to correct these things. And that's difficult. Everybody in this group recognizes that. If we were to think of Freud in the cycle of development of the human, at some point at 26, we stop. We take all that baggage with us all the way through life. Now you got to reprogram it. And the thing is, it's almost impossible. And when you run into a 70-year-old that's thinking that way in a community, it could be like a wildfire, and it never stops. So then it makes it before the courts. And then you're being judged by a court of your peers or equals. And the reality is, it's the same community that's about to point out that we don't accept interracial marriages, or let's say a man married to a man, or a man married. I mean, there's all types of discrimination here.
Well, before we look at the exhibit itself and then bring on the Tate family to talk about this story, I just would like to throw it over to Patty, because Mike, you are inter skin color married. We've heard your story, and you're right. I mean, you're all the way down there in Florida, and acceptance is not always at the highest of the list of people. I was in the NAACP meeting yesterday. My 3 Black grandchildren came in. I brought 2 of them on screen and hugged them, and they hugged me. And there's people that are just not down with it. They don't like it. They're sickened by it. And Patty, would you talk to us as a Hispanic about being married to your lily white husband from New York?
Seriously,
and if you would please say hello or to us in Spanish, because your first language was Spanish.
Sí, entonces yo nací acá en Nueva York, ¿no? Pero la primera lengua que mis padres habló fue español y yo tuve que aprender inglés. Entonces, I got to be honest, my parents, as now they're citizens, but they came as immigrants. I'm first born here, and I got to be honest, I was embarrassed to say this at one point, but now I want to shout it out to the world. We had lived next door to people that were very racist, and when I was younger, my parents had very broken language. Now like you could tell heavy accent. That's what I'm trying to say. Standard on our car, with racial stuff, like just I don't remember what, because I was young, but that really scarred me mentally. I overcame it apparently, but it really is a thing. It is a thing. But going back to, what do you call it, right? Inter what? You know what I call it? I'm going to share with the world, and maybe this could be a thing. It's intercultural, because we can agree there's different cultures, and I don't think that ever should change. Mm-hmm. Culture is a beautiful thing. It's history, and that's where I think the lines are miscrossed, and it's having a short circuit. I think we need to rewire and rephrase and call it, intercultural marriage. And I think that's fair. I don't know if anybody agrees, but that's what I believe in my heart. Back to you, Marty, or whoever is next.
Well, I appreciate your comments on that, honestly, because I have met your husband, Mike, and he is a wonderful teddy bear guy. He's a big guy. I mean, I must be 6'5", 6'6", in construction. And he is just a wonderful person. And that's just really where it begins and ends. It doesn't matter. It's like you guys fell in love. And I think that's a lot of what happened with Othello and our 2-year odyssey to try and build this exhibit. He actually truly was a Black guy. He was very famous. The real Othello that inspired Shakespeare to create this play. And, he was an ambassador from Sicily, who actually was invited to come and live in the royal court in England by the Queen. And so when he first showed up, we discovered and found out with this that he was given a parade, and many of the people in the court had never seen a Black person before in their life, and they were mesmerized by him. And this is what led to the play by Shakespeare. His inspiration was actually this Black ambassador. And so through our studies and research, and with the National Endowment for the Humanities, a grant to the Columbia University professor who published his book about this, is where all this got started about 2.5 years ago. And then, of course, everybody read the article in the Wall Street Journal, which is well documented, all about this research. And then that is what led to our exhibit. And people have often asked, well, why is the Presidential Center covering all these issues? They have nothing to do with the presidency. It's stupid, childish, and inappropriate, and you're just looking for shock value to try and cover some fake exhibit to help your friends who are Black. And we told them, no, wait a minute, you're all wrong there. See, actually, Fanny Tremble, a very famous British actress, was visiting the President of the United States in Boston and was eating dinner at his table, John Quincy Adams. And in her book, when you read her book that she published, is where she was shocked to hear him state out loud how sickening it was to see Blacks and whites together. And his first revulsion, despite being the hero of Amistad, which is how most of us know him, despite that, he was very much so against miscegenation, which is the intermingling of any skin colors together for any reason in a love affair. And he published letters about this in the Boston newspapers. And his talk was very denigrating and filthy. And we think that a lot of that is still going on to this day. And when you look at even today, a modern day Othello, or a reverse Othello. Like my son is a white guy. His fiance is a black lady. Okay. You look at Brian Keith Tate. He was in love and had a love affair with a white lady as a black man. This is actually Othello happening all over again, and cultural angst against that. And when you have an all white jury, and the only way that the wife could explain to her husband was, well, he must have raped me. Was, gosh, you guys actually were in love for quite a while and had many sexual instances. So it doesn't really seem to add all up. But if that's the only way you can explain it to your white husband, is that you were raped, let's put this guy in prison. And so I think a lot of the anomalies with this story have been very shocking to me. And putting a person away for rape for 2 life sentences. Reverend Howes, could you explain to us a little bit about this case, a little bit more background about this modern day Othello?
Yes, it's not anything new. It's happened over the sequence of time, that there are often relationships, and often we cannot predict who we will fall in love with or have affairs with. Things do happen, and that's the human side of each of us that we find ourselves reaching for love and concern, and it often happens. This was a case that was started out pretty well as a situation that happened, and the relationship that did come about. The law has a way of being able to come forth and bring judgment, and particularly if we are not on board with what's happening. And this seemed to be one of those cases that they continue to find over and over. There were in jail, out of jail, not enough evidence. And one of the things that often happens with people of color is that maybe you cannot afford the kind of legal assistance that's needed in the courtrooms. So it makes it easier to go over and over. And we used to call it double jeopardy, but now here's a case of probably triple jeopardy. It went over and over again. Finally, without an opportunity to be able to express it, as you said earlier, Martin, to a husband, because you understand the ramifications, decided, well, maybe he raped me. There were also actions that there were relatives who had possibly had the affair, and so he ends up in trying to be able to get him to come to the point to he become an informant with the law. He was able to say some things as well, and that landed Mr. Tate with at least 2 life sentences as a result. As when you look at the record, there's nothing that will cause him, some of the things, even DNA, having DNA and losing DNA. And so what happens, they go and find his cousin, they find a relative and get his DNA. His DNA is 98% being shown. The others is like 2%. And so,
yes, okay. Quite a few facts that are pretty shocking. And I asked the natural questions before we go to break and come back. I asked the natural questions. Was there any beating, battering, fists, brutality? All those questions that I've asked about this case have all been no, there was not. Because I keep saying and then Reverend Olemny, who will probably join us later or be on the second show, she said also the doctor who examined her said that there was not any indication of rape or vaginal tear or anything, and so with all that doubt in mind, it makes me wonder How does a person get put away for 2 life sentences at plus 24 years for a situation like that? That seems really, really heavy-handed.
Right.
Yeah.
But Martin, it's not unusual. It's not unusual. It happens constantly.
Wow.
And we've seen it. Yeah.
And I'm so aloof as a white person that it is unusual to me, because
Right.
I'm not familiar with these cases like you are. But I'll tell you what, it is pretty shocking to see a person get 2 life sentences for a very doubtful rape. Guys, when we come back, give us a couple of minutes, get a cup of coffee, get a drink of water, check face bottom, check on some pets. We are going to come back in a second, and we have to pay the bills with the 2 commercials. When we do come back, we are very fortunate today to have joining us on stage Mr. Kenneth Tate. I believe he was there for all of the trials and all the court activities and court case. And we're going to hear directly from the family. So please give us 1 second. We will be right back. Thank you for joining us on the Presents Streaming Network.
Did you ever miss someone who has passed away? Now there's Missugram app, giving people a brand new way to tribute the lives of deceased loved ones, or simply remember tender memories. This exclusive app is a user-friendly social media platform, giving people everywhere a respectable and comfortable place to create private or public memoriams. Missugram has additional features like chat rooms and links to deceased databases and inspirational quotes. Users can also comment and connect on public posts. Join us and keep memories alive forever. Everyone wants to be remembered. For more details and download on the Google Play or Apple App Store, visit miss-u-gram.com.
Well, thank you, everybody, for enduring our commercials. And also thank you to our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't do what we do, especially Missugram, another show coming up in March 8th, in combination with International Women's Day. We will be having another Goodbye, I Love You show. So tune in March 8th for sure, as we celebrate women across the world, and also enjoy another episode of the Goodbye, I Love You show, sponsored by Missugram. So thank you so much, Missugram. And also to all our other sponsors, I want to welcome at this time Mr. Kenneth Tate. Mr. Tate, thank you for taking time out today to tell the story of your family and what has happened to the Honorable Mr. Brian Keith Tate. Mr. Tate, welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and Reverend Howes, would you mind giving us a little introduction out of respect for Mr. Tate, of who he is and where he lives? And
I think Mr. Tate, you still live in Gastonia, and he's from that general area, as his relative was from. He continues to live in the area. He is a voice on behalf of the family, and as they state in the scripture, he's of age. He's going to speak for himself. So at this time, I give you Mr. Tate, if you will. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Mr. Tate, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, my name is Kenneth Tate. I am Brian Keith's first cousin. I've lived in Gaston County, Gastonia area all my life. Born here in 1955. So I've been here for a while. And I've seen changes, some good and some bad. With the judicial system, and our family has been, hurt over the years with the events that has transpired from this particular case with Keith. We feel like that it was just a injustice toward him, knowing some of the circumstances behind this. And I think that the world need to hear this, because it happens to so many Black men that they don't get the fair trial, or they don't have the proper representation that it takes to, have this trial in their favor.
Absolutely. And we know that 1 in 3 Black males under the age of 22 will be incarcerated. So, I have, as I've told people many times, I have 3 Black male grandsons. So you ask yourself, I wonder which one of them is going to prison. And that's a fact of life that is very disparaging. I put it in my 8th book, that the prison population in the United States is about 40% Black. There's about 900,000 inmates that are Black. It's very, very disproportionate. And I think President Obama, that's one of the main reasons that he went to visit a prison himself. He was the first president in history to visit a prison. And I see Dr. Olemi has joined us. Reverend Olemi, can you hear us okay?
Smar, Doris Lane Smar.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Mr. Mangello, Doris Elaine Smar, Director of Equal Justice for All People. And I apologize for being late. I had internet problems.
It's no problem. These things happen. And one of our guests last week for the Crypto Genius show was stuck in a snowstorm in Canada. He actually came on for his particular show from his car and got kicked off 3 times. So he just kept coming back. Dr. Goldston from University of Pennsylvania. Would you like to give us a short briefing of what's going on with Mr. Brian Keith Tate?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me on. I will just give you a brief summary of what has occurred with Mr. Brian, that I have fully personally investigated this case. I've been on site. I've interviewed witnesses. I have statements. The North Carolina Actual Innocence Project is actually working on this case at the present time. I originally filed a clemency petition back on November the 24th, 2010, requesting Governor Beverly Perdue to exonerate Mr. Tate based on the information that I had received. I received a telephone call on November the 1st, 2007 from a Mrs. Pat Hansen, director of the governor's clemency office. Mrs. Hansen stated to me that it was good news. The governor has found merit in his case, and it was referred to the Innocence Project for further investigation. Prior to Governor Perdue leaving office, Mr. Tate's petition was placed on her for signature. I don't know what occurred, if she did not have time at the end of her term to complete all of the petitions, but Governor Pat McCrory came into office and denied the petition and stated that we could reapply in 3 years. I did read for clemency for Mr. Tate, and it Roy, I understand, has stated that he will not be reviewing the case because Mr. Tate is eligible for parole. However, Mr. Tate is not eligible for parole until 2040, which is another 19 years. This man has already spent 32 plus years in prison for a crime which he did not commit. And it is anyone that takes the time, 164 pages of documents, all of how can you accept a positive identification from an 11 and 12-year-old at the time? 2 years later, it was led in a dark room with nothing but the TV on. How was it that this man was able to remove a screen from a window, allegedly remove the fan, crawl over the alleged victim, get into the house, and allegedly rape this woman? When she was taken to the hospital, stated to the doctor that she was raped by one man. And all of a sudden, it morphed into 2. One of the children stated there were 3 men. So we don't know what the truth is. But I do know, based on my investigations and the evidence, this man is completely innocent. The actual person who with this lady was the one who evidently stated that he had lent an item for breaking and entering, and because he would not accept a plea to that crime, he was made an example of. He was actually railroaded. And this started with the police and with the prosecutor, and all the way down to the system. I don't know what the atmosphere was in the courtroom. You have an all-white jury. You have a man of color, which he did not commit. Attorney that was assigned to him did not even attempt to and represent him properly, and that is well documented.
Martin, you're still muted.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Mr. Tate, I was suggesting that perhaps, since it sounds like Reverend Olemi is in the Matrix a lot, are you familiar with a lot of the things that occurred in this courtroom that you could share with the audience today?
Yes. My first observation being there was the attorney that was state appointed attorney that was representing Keith. I don't know that he was not properly equipped or had studied the case or did not have any real interest in it, with his camaraderie with the defense and even with some of the witnesses for the defense. So that was one thing that I saw right away. And then when the defense had the witnesses, the children, to identify or to point out Keith. Keith and I was sitting, I would think I was one row behind him. And at that time we looked so much alike. It dawned on me, and I told my aunt, I said, I find it very strange that hearing some of the evidence, how they could point somebody out in a courtroom when there's two people sitting there that have so many similar features. And so that troubled me. And then along with the presentation that the defense was putting out, I just thought it was pretty much a case that they had already decided, and he was going to be found guilty no matter what. That is what I believe.
And there was another very interesting thing to this that struck me was Reverend Olemi told me that they offered him a plea deal to just suck it up, shut up, lower it down a little bit. You'll just get a couple of years. You admit on the paper that you did it. Maybe you didn't, but you just say that you did it. You need to say that, okay? And then you'll just get a couple of years and this will be done. And that they were enraged over the fact that he refused to accept a simple plea deal and admit that he had done it, whether he did it or not, but just to put that on the paper and just let that go. And so then Reverend Olemny said that they threw the book at him to make an example out of him, to punish him and showcase that you don't go against white power like this, and we run things around here. And this was also very interesting to me. Could you guys, Reverend Howes and Mr. Tate, talk a little bit about this?
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, one of the things that happened with court-appointed attorneys is that they work in conjunction, and they're assigned by the DA, the DA's office. Their principal assignment usually is to get them to at least a plea bargain, and obvious that you have a young attorney that's trying to be able to find himself an opportunity to be able to be a presentable lawyer. He can't push but so far. And then the legal system, whatever he does is subject to what's cleared and okay. And often there's no major push, but number one, there is not anyone from that particular client who's doing any significant amount of financing. And that falls constantly over. We can get a plea bargain, then we feel that we've done something, we've given him something, and they've given us something. And unfortunately, that's across the conglomerate. There is a lot of that, and it continues to happen. And that's why we've often tried to be able to speak to individuals who are going through legal systems, is to try to be able to raise funding to get your own attorney, because a lot of time it does not happen. And but we know that that's been significant. It has constantly happened, most too often, and in the particular area in which we're in, I've seen it on so many cases. I've seen young men go to jail because he felt there is no way that I can come up with the money. I had a nephew who actually who shot himself in front of the police. While I was negotiating with him, he had gone to jail because there were 3 guys. They identified him as being one of those guys. He was who was asleep, who happened to come and get in the car, and of course he was not with these guys when these things happened. They come and arrested him because they saw him at a service station. He was sitting in the back of the car, but he was asleep. He ended up going to jail because he did not have any kind of attorney to be able to keep him out of it, even though he was innocent. He would not rat out the others as to what they did. He goes to jail. He makes 18 months. And so now he's at his girlfriend's house, and when they have an altercation, she wants him out of the house. She leaves. She called the police. She wants him out of the house because he's arguing about something that she's done. He calls me. I have to leave church, and I come to talk with him. He say, "Uncle Billy, I need you to just walk with me out of the house because I'm not going back to jail. And here I am with an altercation, and they won't listen to me." Had the police there, I talked to them, and I said, "Let me go in," and I talked with him. He said, I got a little gun back here. It's back here in the room. And if I can't go with you, I'm not going back to jail. I asked him, I talked with the police, just give me a moment. Well, he was crying. He was saying to me, he's tired. "Can I come and be with you?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to bring you with me." The police got a call, and all of a sudden, they had to go to another thing, another incident. They kick in the back door, and he runs down the hall just when he's getting ready to come out. And I hear a gunshot go off. He blows his brain out. And then they tell me how sorry they were. I said, "Could you not wait with me just a few moments? You're leaving one incident to go to something else that you needed everybody to go, that you could not trust me to be able to deal with it." And they said, "We're sorry as to what happened, but sorry didn't bring his life back."
No, it didn't. Well, I would like to take a moment to showcase the change.org petition. for everybody out there. If you are interested and motivated to help us with this, I have signed this petition. We certainly are hopeful that by bringing this to light, we have already seen since this petition went live that now when you type in Brian Keith Tate's name on the internet, it doesn't come up with many-year-old Beverly Perdue, Governor McCrory situations for signature. It actually comes up with the petition now. So let me do that. Let me share this at change.org with everybody so folks can see where to go. I did notice that Patty Frudenberg in New York had already found it. So it's not that difficult. If you were to type in Brian Keith Tate, you would come to this page at change.org. Dr. Rodriguez, can you see that in Massachusetts?
I do, and I just clicked and pasted myself as we speak.
Okay, perfect. So
Yep.
free innocent inmate Brian Keith Tate. He was born and raised in Gastonia, North Carolina. He grew up with a large and loving family, including 3 sisters and 3 brothers. And the case is here. I know a lot of people have questioned, what's this all about? I don't want to sign something that's a bit scary that I don't know anything about. This is actually what happened. The ordeal was actually August 26, 1990 at 2:30 a.m. in the morning, where he resided with his parents in Gastonia. 2 Gastonia police detectives came to the residence and asked to speak with him about a break-in in the area. He was advised that a confidential tipster stated he was in the possession of some tapes and a VCR that had been taken in the break-in. And Mr. Tate advised the officers that he had received some tapes and a VCR on loan from a person he knew on Saturday morning, the 25th of August. So that was the day before, and it was on a dresser in his bedroom. So he advised the detectives he was not aware that they were stolen when they were loaned to him. The items were never identified as belonging to the victim or connected to the alleged break-in. They were never identified as such. Several more officers joined the search. At some point, one of the officers came out of the bedroom with a pair of pants and a gun in his hands. The officer stated that he had found the gun in the pocket of the pants on the floor. In fact, the gun was the property of Mr. Tate's sister and was located on the dresser in the bedroom. The gun was never connected to the alleged crime or any other unlawful activity. I know that's another thing people have said. Well, was the tape and the VCR? They found that and they can, no, it was not. Well, what about the gun? That no, it was not. There's your answer. No, it was not. He was taken to the police station where he was harassed by police trying to force him to admit to the theft. He was then handcuffed to a chair and advised he was under arrest for first-degree rape, first-degree sexual offense, attempted second-degree rape, first-degree burglary, and assault with a deadly weapon. The detectives then forcibly pulled hair from his head and his private area around the groin. He was taken to the magistrate's office where he was charged and put on a $150,000 bond. Even though several witnesses testified that Mr. Tate was with them the entire evening and night of the alleged crime, he was still convicted. And an unnamed cousin confided in a friend that he was involved with some of the alleged offenses, but the charges were bogus and Keith was not involved. He further stated that he, Mr. Tate's cousin, was having an affair with the alleged victim, a married Caucasian woman. He and a friend were invited guests in her home. The victim had lent the VCR and tapes to him and his friend. They in turn lent the items to Keith. The story of robbery and rape was made up by the alleged victim to avoid an incident with her husband. We had talked about this earlier. The information was totally dismissed by the district attorney and never investigated. Mr. Tate was subsequently released on bail around September 15th, but was arrested again around September 20th. But another judge ordered that he be released again as there was not sufficient evidence to hold him. Around December 31st, 1990, Detectives Anderson and Friday approached him again to the hospital to take a second DNA test. They stated that Mr. Tate's first blood samples had been misplaced or lost. Mr. Tate was arrested a third time, and the DA offered to permit him to plead guilty to the crimes for a life sentence. Mr. Tate refused as he was not guilty, and his attorney advised him that the DA had no concrete evidence or proof of his involvement. Mr. Tate was again released on bond. At this point, I don't know how much more I can read, guys, for you out there. This is literally, this this questionable and silly. Approximately 2 months later, Mr. Tate, his girlfriend, and a 2-year-old son were at a convenience store. His girlfriend went inside. The alleged victim approached Mr. Tate while he was sitting in the car playing with his son. She stated, "You have a very beautiful baby." Mr. Tate's girlfriend exited the store and demanded to know why he was speaking with her. He did not know who the woman was and stated that he had never seen her before. DNA at the alleged crime scene matched Mr. Tate's first cousin 98%, and 2% was attributed to Brian Keith. First cousins would naturally share the same DNA. The records show that the DNA test results were inadvertently switched and the records were changed, but a corrected test was not performed. Mr. David Tate, Keith's first cousin, was a sexual partner of the alleged victim and police informant. He accepted a plea deal for 30 years for burglary and spent less than 12 years in prison. Mr. Brian Keith Tate is serving 2 life sentences plus 24 years for a crime which he did not commit based on the sole testimony and ID of 11 and 12-year-old 2 years later. Mr. Tate was pointed out in court by the prosecuting attorney to the children. They sat in the courtroom for 4 days observing Mr. Tate. It was obvious that their testimony was well rehearsed. Further, it is well documented that Keith's court-appointed defense attorney was inept and did not sufficiently represent him. The case inconsistencies are detectives gave different versions and times they entered Mr. Tate's home. On the day of the incident, the alleged victim advised the emergency room physician she had sex with only one person. The alleged victim stated there were 13 people in the residence while she was raped. The DNA test results may have been manipulated. The alleged victim stated that there was only one telephone in the home and it was on the couch in the living room, but the child testified that he went to the bedroom to get the telephone. The victim stated she never saw the perpetrator's face, but saw a black hand holding a small silver gun while being raped. She testified that she never opened her eyes, even though she removed a crying 6-week-old infant from a swing and gave it a bottle. The victim's son testified that the men wore white gloves and the gun was held in the left hand. Mr. Tate is right-handed. The victim told detectives that she just woke up on the date of the incident, but testified in court she woke up when she heard a person say, "We have to hurry up and it's getting dawn." She also testified that she never heard the men say anything. An 11 and 12-year-old sleeping in the room testified 2 years later that they could positively identify Mr. Tate, even though the only light in the room was from a small TV. The child testified that he observed the man from the living room bent over his mother at the dining room table, but he would have had to have been standing in the doorway as there was a hall separating the rooms. Mr. Tate was never placed in a police lineup, but detectives took a picture from his girlfriend's house. A gun, shell casings, cigarette butts, a window fan, hairs, and other items testified to were never presented in court. It was stated that they were lost. The victim's husband testified that he found the window fan and some kudzu vines. The 20-year resident stated there was never any kudzu in the neighborhood. The victim testified she did not work outside of the house, but in fact she was employed by a local newspaper. The victim's husband advised a detective that he was not sure he could identify the men. Clemency petitions have been filed twice on behalf of Mr. Tate. Governor Beverly Perdue found merit in the case, and it was placed on her desk for a signature. She did leave office, and the incoming governor, Patrick McCrory, denied the petition. The case is currently being investigated by the North Carolina Actual Innocence Project. A new clemency petition was filed with the current governor, Roy Cooper. Governor Cooper refused to review the case, stating Mr. Tate is eligible for parole. However, the parole date is not until the year of 2040. Mr. Tate has already served over 32 years in prison. Please join us as we demand that Mr. Tate be released immediately and have his case reviewed. The travesty of justice has been devastating to him and his family. Their lives have been destroyed for a crime which he did not commit. If you would like to sign this petition, it is here at the Free Innocent Inmate Brian Keith Tate. If you're just watching this show a bit later, say next week or as a rerun, this show is available, of course, on Facebook. It's on Twitter, it's on YouTube, and on 5 channels of Facebook in the archive. And we will see you again for another part 2 of this series on Brian Keith Tate, a modern-day Othello. Do we have any closing comments today from the family? Mr. Tate, did you have anything that you felt like you didn't have time to get out, or would like to say one final thing before we come back for part 2 in March?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for the effort that they're putting forth on our behalf to get Keith home. And, other than that, I don't have anything else to say.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Reverend Howes, did you want to say any parting comments for us today to think about?
Just again, to echo the same things of Mr. Tate, and thanking you for bringing this case to the public that they can hear it more. I think it's situations like this, all of us working together. If we really mean justice to be correct, all of us, we're going to have to make the same kind of effort to bring it to the public. And again, I commend you and thank you so much for inviting us, and hopefully get opportunity to serve with you again. So,
well, thank you so much. And I couldn't do what I do. I'm just a figurehead, but our co-CEO, Dr. Rodriguez with Dr. Martinez, our 2 co-CEOs, and our members like chairperson of the Latin American Committee in South America, Patty Frudenberg.
Thank you so much.
These are the people doing the daily work. We did have a couple of comments come in, and just people were saying hello and whatnot, guys. I didn't put a lot of them up today, people from Africa who are interested in what's going on with justice in the United States, and other people. We will get to those comments for part 2. And Dr. Rodriguez, can you take us out today and say goodbye until we come back for the second episode?
Absolutely, Martin. Again, coming up to the second episode, I hope that we can bring more onto the platform and, let's say, enlighten the world. Am I correct, Reverend? And let's do it all together, because we cannot stand alone.
Right.
Stand together.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you again for part 2 of the modern day Othello, the Brian Keith Tate story in March. Thank you for joining us on the Presents Streaming Network.